Hi, this is my tanking guide for Arms Warrior two-hand tanking. This is good really before 36, but 36 is when you really unleash a lot of your potential and you get a lot more complicated of combos and rage management. So that's what we're going to focus on really is 36 onwards. Um, and I'm going to try to go over as much as I can with you. So some preliminary information that I have for you is that in World of Warcraft, NPCs determine who they're going to target and attack by the amount of threat produced on them by each individual in a combat situation. Um, Threat is largely tied to damage, except in niche situations for abilities that usually list that they generate more threat than just their damage does. So things like Heroic Strike and Sunder Armor, as you can see in there, it lists an increased amount of threat. Um, so NPCs can also be taunted to force attacks to be targeted towards a certain player instead of another. Things like taunt, literally just taunt, and mocking blow. These things force them to hit you. Mocking blow, real quick for a side note. If you use an attack from behind an enemy, it can't block or parry it, so you'll have a higher success rate getting a mob off of somebody else if you use mocking blow from behind. Um, so basically, if you're dealing more damage than anybody else, you don't really have to worry about using things that generate uh, a lot of threat on something than anything else if you're just dealing the most damage. So that's the idea behind two-hand warrior tanking. Arms warrior tanking is just you deal the most damage, so everything hits you no matter what, because you're just you're putting out more than everybody else. Um, warrior is basically perfectly suited for this. It's a super strong class for mid game to late game. That really outperforms everybody around this level. I've done dungeons with people that are 10 levels over to me. Once I get level 36, I can do dungeons with almost level 50s that still can't outdamage me, as long as they're not playing a warrior as well. Rogues, mages, anybody. It's very hard for other classes to outdamage a properly played warrior, it seems. Um, so primary abilities for warriors level 36 and on are going to be charge, which is pretty self-explanatory. You run at something and then you generate a bunch of rage off of it. It also causes a small stun, which is pretty much irrelevant. However, that can stop casts, but you're not ever really doing that because you have to be out of combat, and if your teammate is combat locked, then you probably are too. Then we have Blood Rage, which is a small health sacrifice for a rage buff. Um, Blood Rage needs to be used on cooldown every single time. Battle Shout, which is an AoE melee attack power buff. This needs to be up at all times. There's some programs that'll help you keep this up. This is Weak Auras that I have here, a custom script for Weak Auras. And it just shows the symbol and makes a heartbeat sound when mine goes off. Personally, I recommend it. I'm going to activate Battle Shot now, so in 2 minutes you'll see that wear off and you can see it. Sweeping Strikes. This is actually your most important ability. This is where the majority of your damage comes. It costs 30 rage, and then the next 5 melee attacks the next 5 melee attacks that you use will also hit the enemy closest to the enemy that you just hit. So this also doubles up some modifiers like Heroic Strike and Cleave. So Heroic Strike could be used when you need to generate more threat, which you really shouldn't ever need to because you should be dealing the most damage. And Cleave can be used to double up the double up attack, so you can actually hit 4 times in one attack to get a lot of burst damage out. It also works with Mortal Strike, which is an ability that you unlock at level 40 in the arms tree, but yeah, you unlock it at level 40. So it is the preferred thing, but you unlock it at level 40. So after Sweeping Strikes, we have Berserker Rage. Berserker Rage is an ability that enables you to generate additional rage when enemies are hitting you. So the more enemies that are hitting you, the more rage that you'll generate. This is extremely important, should be used on cooldown as well, just like Sweeping Strikes and Blood Rage. Whirlwind is your secondary damaging ability after Sweeping Strikes. It hits up to 4 enemies within 8 yards of you, causing your weapon damage to each target. This is super, super good. It's just barely behind Sweeping Strikes in terms of overall damage in dungeons. It should be used twice in between every Sweeping Strike cooldown. Cleave, before 40, Cleave is the preferred ability to help you deal damage. So it actually costs fuck, how much does it cost? Sorry, I'm unprepared for this. Right, so it costs 20 rage, and it deals 2 attacks, 1 attack to the enemy that you hit, and 1 to the nearest ally to that enemy. So you basically attack twice plus 36 damage. However, when you're attacking like this, you don't generate any rage off of your hit. So in reality, while this thing says that it's a 20 rage cost, you're losing the opportunity cost of generating rage with a regular attack, meaning that this comes out to somewhere between 30 to 35 rage per cast. 30 to 35 rage per cast overall, because you lose out on 1 hit that would generate rage otherwise. This is something to take into account when you're thinking about rage efficiency and how you should be using your rage. Also, Cleave is very good for dumping rage because of this. It's a high rage cost that is modified into your auto attack. So it can help you get rid of all your fucking rage really quick so you can swap stances. The lower your weapon swing time is, the more rage it generates. So something that swings every 4 seconds generates more rage than something that swings every second. So then what do we have next? We've got Demoralizing Shout. Demoralizing Shout reduces the melee attack power of all enemies within 10 yards of you by 109. That's at whatever level this is, whatever rank this is, rank 4. So Demoralizing Shout is your preferred method of damage reduction that you should be using. It also generates a small amount of threat on you. Pretty much everything in the game generates a small amount of threat if it's affecting an enemy or if it's affecting an ally that's fighting an enemy. Yeah, so it just reduces attack power of everything within a certain range. Thunderclap is the next ability that we're going to talk about. Thunderclap reduces the attack speed of up to 4 enemies around you by 10%. This is very good at reducing damage if you're scared you're going to die. So now I want to go into extrapolations that we can make from all this information. Damage is capped at 4 mobs per warrior because you can only hit up to 4 mobs at a time with Whirlwind. This is your highest target or highest number of targets an ability can hit. So there's no reason to pull anything more than 4 unless you have a full AoE team with mages and warlocks and I guess kind of hunters too, maybe, but mainly just mages and warlocks was where you're going to be wanting to pull more than that. You can also pull a little bit more if you have a highly single target focused team with shamans and rogues, things like that, that will instantly give something as soon as you start a pull. So you're wanting to pull 5, so that way you can actually use whirlwind twice at least and get the full value out of the rage that you're spending on it. I would say that 5 and 6 is usually reasonable if you're pulling with rogues on your team. Anything more than that, though, really, you need to have a full AoE team, at least 2 mages for that as well. So now I want to talk about Demoralizing Shout and Thunderclap. Both of these abilities kind of do the same thing. They reduce incoming damage on you. Thunderclap reduces it by reducing attack speed, and Demoralizing Shout reduces it by reducing their attack damage. Now what we learned earlier was that Berserker Rage generates a rage based on the number of times that you got hit, not the amount of damage that you got hit for. So Thunderclap will actually reduce the amount of rage that you're generating because it slows down the attack speed of the enemy. This can slightly reduce your DPS and should be considered if you think that you have a strong enough healer that it's not an issue to get hit a lot, to take a lot of damage. In a situation where you're only pulling 4 mobs, 100% without a doubt, Thunderclap every time for damage reduction. For just pure damage reduction. It will do more than Demoralizing Shout will. However, Demoralizing Shout will reduce their damage while also not reducing the rage that you generate, thus not affecting the amount of damage that you're dealing. So if you have a bad healer, Thunderclap. If you have a good healer, Demoralizing Shout. If you're pulling anything more than I would say about 6, Demoralizing Shout is probably the better option for that number of mobs as well. So these are all things to take into consideration when you're choosing which to use. I prefer to use Demoralizing Shout almost every time. I like to work my healers. I'm working hard to dump out DPS so they can work hard to keep me alive so I can keep doing that. It makes it quicker overall, and that's what I want to do. Sweeping Strikes and Berserker Rage actually have the same cooldown. They don't share a cooldown, but they have the same cooldown length of 30 seconds. So every time that you pop one of these things, you should be popping the other one. And then when you're in these stances, you can kind of tell how long until the other one's going to come off because you should be activating them at roughly the same time. And always pay attention to that. Let's see. Cleave, like I said, is a good ability to dump rage until you have Mortal Strike. Mortal Strike is preferred over Cleave for rage dumping. They have a similar rage cost. Cleave is actually probably a little bit more rage cost, but Mortal Strike definitely will be more effective. So Cleave, like we said, is 2 auto attacks plus 36 damage, and that's very ranked up. Where Mortal Strike will be 2 auto attacks plus 110 damage on each of them, while also wounding the target for healing reduction. So it's 100 more damage, and also wounds targets. And a little less rage, so it's a little more rage efficient too. So the basic combo that you're going to be working with here at the start of every pull is you're going to be doing charge, then you're going to be using blood rage, and then with an auto attack, this should bump you up to 30 rage. So you can activate Sweeping Strikes, and then as soon as you activate Sweeping Strikes, you're going to bounce over to Berserker stance, and then you're going to activate Sweeping Strikes. If you happen to get a crit, you might have enough rage to activate this immediately. If you don't, then you're going to activate Blood Rage or Berserker Rage right away. Then after you activate Berserker Rage, you're going to pop Whirlwind, and then you're gonna have a couple seconds where whirlwind's still on cooldown, 10 seconds. So you can pop demoralizing shout. You can thunderclap if you think that you need you can thunderclap if you think you need the extra damage reduction. You can use Mortal Strike or Cleave, depending on your level, depending on how many times you're critting, to dump your rage out. And then you're going to use Whirlwind again, which then should put you at about the time when you need to start building rage back up for sweeping strikes again and starting a new rotation. So we're going to just show this real quick. Okay, so now I've got some pack demonstrations for you. This is what it looks like when you have a healer, basically what it's going to look like when you're in a dungeon. What you're going to do is you're going to do charge, blood rage, and then you're going to auto attack once, and then you're going to have enough rage for sweeping strikes. So you're going to activate that immediately, swap into berserker stance. If you have enough rage for whirlwind right away, which means that you critical strike twice, then you're going to use whirlwind. If not, then you're going to use blood rage, and then you're going to use whirlwind after that. After you use whirlwind, you're going to have a 10-second cooldown, so that'll give you enough time to generate enough rage to use a mortal strike, or if you're a lower level, cleave, and then generate enough rage for your whirlwind again, leaving you enough time to switch back to battle stance and get another sweeping strikes off. Okay, so we're going to demonstrate this right now. Charge, blood rage, sweeping strikes. Charge, blood rage, sweeping strikes, swap, berserker rage, whirlwind. We're going to buff ourselves now. Then we're going to have enough for a mortal strike here. Whirlwind's off cooldown now. We generated a bunch of rage, so we're going to blow another another mortal strike. Now we can reduce some attack damage here. And we're just waiting for our sweeping strike to come off cooldown. So there's sweeping strike off cooldown, blow a little rage, switch back to berserker stance. You know, again do the same combo, berserker stance into berserker range into whirlwind, and then you're just gonna beat these things down while you're waiting for your spells to come back up. And there we go. Whirlwind came off cooldown, we instantly pop it again, we're instantly swap back to battle stance. I executed there because it's just the better thing to do to end this fight quicker. And that's it. That was a pretty good example of what you're looking for here. Probably the best one that I'm going to get live recording. So this is probably going to be the one that's used in the video. I rage dumped there. Now I'm getting my whirlwind up as soon as possible. I got berserker rage activated. Mortal strike because I've got a shitload of... And I didn't get healed. I may have been line of sighting a little bit there. Yikes.